Hi guys, welcome back to another video on my channel. Welcome to today's summer reading book guide. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to call this video yet. Here's the thing, a lot of booktubers out there are uploading books like hot girl summer book recommendations and all of that kind right now, and I don't really want to do a video like that because first of all, I'm not really a big fan of this hot girl summer or like hot girl any season trend, to be honest. I think it's kind of whack. Plus, personally, I'm not really a seasonal reader, so I don't necessarily have these associations like this is the perfect summer book. I mean, especially with summer, of course, it's kind of easy to like gauge of what a perfect summer book is, because if you're reading a book and it takes place during the summer, maybe they're always chilling at the beach, then it's like easy to say this is a good summer book recommendation. But I feel like that would be kind of like taking the lazy route, and I don't want to do that. So I decided, instead of anything like that, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to recommend you 8 different books based on the countries they're taking place in, because I think a thing we associate with summer often is traveling in your city, your county, your country, your continent, or all over the globe. It is something we tend to associate with the good weather and the high temperatures of the summer season. Now, obviously there are tons of reasons though why you right here right now might not be in the situation to be able to go out and travel somewhere, be that monetary issues, COVID restrictions, health issues, you don't have the time to take off from works, your studies, whatever it may be. There's so many reasons why you might not be able to go somewhere physically right now, but here's the beauty of it all. Books allow us to travel in our minds. That's escapism at its finest, if you ask me. So as I just said, I'm going to now give you 8 book recommendations that all take place in different countries all over the globe. Just to clarify, these books aren't about these countries that are taking place in. It's simply that a certain plot was plopped into a certain location on planet Earth without being necessarily related to that place on planet Earth or like talking about it a whole lot. But all of these books take place in different locations, and maybe one of them is where you would like to be right here right now, and then you could pick up the book and be there without actually being there. You know what I'm saying? The book recommendations I'm going to give you are from all kinds of different genres, so I hope there's going to be something out there for you. Let's get started. Okay, buckle in, because the first place I'm going to be taking you to is South Korea. Now, I decided to recommend you a pretty light-hearted, summery, romancy kind of novel for South Korea, because the fact is I have a lot of books on my shelf that take place in South Korea, but most of them are low-key hella depressing and kind of sad and about really tough issues. I have like an entire video about reading Korean books that are actually also written by Korean authors, or like Korean American, Korean / any other nationality authors. So if you're looking for a more heavy-duty kind of read, you can check out that video. But if you're looking for something summery, light, frilly, frolicking, here's the one for you, and that is Soulmates. I believe the cover says it all. The story is just what you would think by seeing this cover, basically. This is a romance book about Hara Wilson, who is dating her stepbrother in Seoul. He's the adopted son of her mother, and her mother is like this super rich, super successful CEO person. And in the first book, this is the second part in a series. Now, I did not read the first part, and neither do you need to in order to understand this. Basically, Hara Wilson, she came to Korea to like find her birth mom. She met her birth mom, but she also met this super cute guy whom she came together with. And only then, still in the first part, she figured out that, oop, he's actually her stepbrother. So that's awkward, of course. But that didn't stop their love. They're still together in this book. And that's basically what this book is about. Like everyone, friends, family, society. It's kind of like against a relationship, of course, as their step siblings. That is kind of awkward, but it's not only about that. It's also just like about her living in Seoul, trying to adapt to living in Seoul. She doesn't really fully speak Korean. She doesn't really feel fully accepted by her co-workers, by, well, again, society. And it's about situations like that. You also have like tons of yummy food descriptions in here. It was honestly, it was a lighthearted, funny, silly kind of read. I had a good time when I read this a couple months ago. So here you go. Next up, I'm taking you to the Caribbean. wouldn't mind being there right now, right? The book I'm going to recommend to you is Agatha Christie's A Caribbean Affair. Now, Agatha Christie, I'm sure you're aware, this is a murder mystery novel. It is out of the Miss Marple series. Most of Agatha Christie's novels take place in cold, rainy, gloomy England, but not this one. To be honest, it's been a hot minute since I read this book, so I don't fully remember why Miss Marple is in the Caribbean. I guess just like for vacation. And obviously she gets wrapped up in a murder mystery again, and she still wants to solve it. I really do not remember who gets murdered or like what really happens in this book, but Agatha Christie is always a good time. And if you're looking for an Agatha Christie that takes place in a sunny location, there are also other recommendations I could give you on the Agatha Christie front. There is one, oh my gosh, I only know the Spanish title of the book, and that's Cita con la Muerte, that takes place in Jordan. So you can look that one up if you care to read a book that takes place in Jordan. Obviously, we have Agatha Christie's very famous Death on the Nile that takes place in Egypt. And I guess there must be a few other ones, but right here, right now, I'm recommending you this one because especially Death on the Nile, you've heard that one before, right? But maybe you haven't heard of this one, so here you go. Next up, I'm taking you to Japan, more specifically Tokyo. What I'm recommending you is Murakami's After Dark. This is only a little more than a short story. It takes place over the span of one night, and it is about a girl called Mari, and we witness how she spends the night hours in Tokyo, the people she meets, the things that happen to her, the things she gets wrapped up in as she's staying awake for the entire night in Tokyo. I actually do think this is a good summer book recommendation because I think especially in the summertime, there's this special feeling that comes on at night when the sun is setting, the temperatures are finally dropping, but people are still out and about everywhere because it's finally colder outside. And there's a special feeling to the nighttime in the summer, I believe. And this book actually does not take place during the summer, it takes place during the autumn, but because it does take place over the span of one night, I made the connection there. You get me? Okay. Next up, we are jumping all the way to Africa. The next book is taking place in Botswana, and that is the #1 Ladies Detective Agency. This, as you can tell, is also per se a bit of a detective story, but this is not per se a coherent story, if you will. This book is divided into, I believe, like 8 chapters per se, but these chapters are more like short stories. And we follow Ma Ramotswe, who is the owner of the #1 Ladies Detective Agency, and several cases she is working on, she has been working on. And they're like all over the place. These stories are not necessarily connected. I mean, you should read them in a row while you're already at it, I guess. But so this, to me, I didn't really read this. It didn't feel like one story is being told from the title page to the end page. But yeah, it's more like a collection of little cases she has worked on and how she has solved them. I don't know. It wasn't, I'm gonna be fully honest with you, this was not like my favorite murder mystery ever written, and also in general I'm not the biggest fan of Alexander McCall Smith, just like style in general. But what I appreciated most about this book was that it was set in Botswana, because there was something else for a change, because I believe most murder mysteries, especially like the ones I'm reading, always taking place in England, because that is just like this quintessential, especially like Agatha Christie location, setting, etc., that all of these murder mysteries are taking place in London, the English countryside. So I appreciated the fact that this took place in Botswana. There you go. Next up, I have actually not yet fully decided which country I want to like place this in, because I do not fully remember which country this book is set in for its majority. Was it in New York or in Paris? What I want to recommend to you is Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code. Now, I read this a while ago, so that's why I cannot quite fully remember right now where the majority of the book is taking place in. I know it ends in like Paris, and we're also like in Scotland at some point. I think we have like flashbacks, so to say, to Italy. But what I'm trying to say, I read this book though while I was living in New York, so I connect this book to New York, but I don't actually think it's taking place there. But I actually do not only want to recommend to you The Da Vinci Code, but honestly any Dan Brown book. I have this feeling that especially in the booktube community, Dan Brown is kind of shat on, and I don't know why. Personally, I really enjoyed all the books I read of his, and I'm fairly certain I read all of his books. My favorites, I think the Da Vinci Code is my favorite. There's another one called, for example, The Lost Symbol, that's taking place in Washington, D.C., if you feel like hopping over there. Another one is kind of like taking place in the Arctic, if I remember correctly. I forgot what it's called. But I personally like this treasure hunting vibe of the Dan Brown novels. I think you do have a good time reading these. I have never looked into why there seems to be this like general opinion out there that these books are like good books, or like good books to like. I don't know, I feel like it's a bit of a theme that people are making fun, especially of dudes that are like, "Ooh, I love the Da Vinci Code." I actually don't know why. I did enjoy this book. You do not have to read the Illuminati series in a row, if I remember correctly, because I actually think I read this first, then I read Inferno, which is like the third book officially of the series. That one, by the way, takes place for the majority of it, I think, in Florence, Italy, and we're also in Istanbul, Turkey, for some part of the story. So those are also some nice travel locations, if you ask me. The first one, Angels and Demons, is primarily set in the Vatican, in Rome, in Italy. Also very nice. And yeah, there are tons of books of his out there. Origin takes place mainly in Spain, in Barcelona and Bilbao, if I remember correctly. Some of Dan Brown's novels, including this Illuminati series, are connected because they're centered around the same protagonist, Robert Langdon, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I do not think you have to necessarily read them in the order of publishing, though. It's a series because they all star the same protagonist, not because you have to read them in a specific order. I'm pretty certain about that because I think that's how I did it, and I did not have problems understanding what happened. So yeah, I don't know why these are getting a bad rep. I really enjoyed, especially the Da Vinci Code. So maybe if you've been thinking about picking these up, if you're looking for like a, yeah, as you just said, treasure hunting, conspiracy, theory, kind of read, that is, I think people are making fun of them maybe because they're like semi-intellectual, because they do take like actual historical references, but then of course some of the stuff must be made up. But I think there's always like a historical note in the beginning of the story, that, yeah, like a facts note in the beginning of these books that does acknowledge like the societies, etc., that are being talked about in these books. They actually exist, but like obviously the plot that is spun around them is out of Dan Brown's own imagination. So I mean, obviously draw the line between reality and fiction, but personally I did think that these were a good time. There you go. Moving on to Lebanon, the book I want to recommend you for that country is The Occasional Virgin by Hanan al-Sheikh. This story, kind of similar to the Number One Ladies Detective Society, is divided into 2 or 3 short stories, so to say. All of these short stories focus around 2 friends. One is called Yvonne and one is called Huda. If I remember correctly, the first one is about them taking a vacation together in Italy. And then the other 2 stories tell kind of like the childhood, both childhoods of these respective friends and like their present day lives and like relationships they're getting into in both Lebanon, and one of them is living in London. Like we learn about them growing up in Lebanon, then one of them is like right now living in London, and the other one is like a theater director in Canada, if I remember correctly. This did feel a bit Sally Rooney, at least to me, as it is a contemporary novel that is about these 2 grown women, and yeah, as I just said, the relationships they make with other people, just like in general the lives they're leading, their backgrounds, their childhoods, their connections to one another. I feel like I always have a hard time describing the plots of contemporary novels, because often it is kind of like the thing of these novels that there's not necessarily a plot line there is to follow, as there is, for example, in a book like this. But yeah, it does, at least for some part, take place in Lebanon, so I thought I would send you off there. The second to last book I want to recommend to you does take place in Hong Kong. It is per se, like the plot of this book is not per se at all connected to it taking place in Hong Kong. But basically, the book I'm talking about right now is Exciting Times by Nisha Dolan. This too is like a contemporary novel that reads very much like Sally Rooney, in case you're into that. This is about Ava, she is Irish, but she moved to Hong Kong to work as an English teacher, and this book is basically about two relationships she starts while living in Hong Kong. One is with a guy called Julian, and one is with another person. I don't know if that would be a spoiler if I told you who it was, so I guess I'm not gonna say anything. But because Ava basically really does not have a life outside of these relationships, this book is really solely about her in these relationships that are pretty weird and kind of toxic, kind of unhealthy, as relationships in these contemporary novels tend to be. But at least what was to me the most exciting part, like, by the way, this title is so misleading. This book is not exciting at all. But to me the most exciting part about this book was the fact that it took place in Hong Kong, even though the story really isn't about that. Kind of, it's more like the setup for the story, as in, like, she does not know anyone there because she moved there to, like, be an English teacher. She doesn't know anyone, and then she only knows these people she gets into relationships with, which is also the reason why she becomes so, like, wrapped up in these relationships, because she literally, seriously, does not have a life, friends, people she knows outside of them. Anyway, so that's exciting times taking place in Hong Kong. Last but not least, this last book does not only take place in one specific location, but it is kind of like about this idea of traveling around. The book I'm recommending to you is Less by Andrew Sean Greer. This is about Arthur Less, a 50-year-old, is he a novelist, a journalist, a writer, a failed novelist? There you go. And he gets an invitation to his ex-boyfriend's wedding. And because he neither wants to go there, nor wants to decline and just be sitting around at home being sad about it, he agrees to go to all these events he has been invited to as a novelist all around the world. I know we are traveling to, like, he lives in San Francisco, then he goes to New York, Mexico City, Morocco, Italy, India, and maybe some other places. We basically witness him going all over the world trying to escape the reality of the fact that his ex-partner is getting married, the fact that he's somewhat, of course, unhappy with his life because he considers himself having failed as a novelist and having failed in his relationship. It was a really, like, funny is probably the wrong word, but I really enjoyed reading this book. Arthur Less was a really likable, relatable character in that sense. I love traveling, so I had a good time witnessing traveling all over the globe, making the connections and experiences he does in these places. Oh yeah, he's also in Berlin at some point. So yeah, if you want to go to more than just one place in the book, this is definitely the way to go. So there you go, guys. These were the 8 travel book recommendations I wanted to give you. I hope, oh my gosh, wait a second. I hope you can maybe pick one of these up and travel somewhere else in your mind, if with no other part of your body, I guess. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you got something out of it. I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye.